Okay, good evening. We're holding Daf Pei Dalid Amud Aleph. We went a little bit ahead yesterday. We're holding by Rabbi Mishmei the Rabbi Omar. Let me see. No, I'm sorry, Abaya Omer, a little bit higher than that. Okay, Abaya Omer. Asim the Tanya de Bechizkiah. Abaya says we learned this from that what was taught in the Bechizkiah. The Tanya de Bechizkiah Ayin Tachas Ayin, Nefesh Tachas Nefesh, V'le Nefesh V'Ayin Tachas Nefesh, V'Yisol Gadai Tach Mamish Zimnin the Mishkachas LaAyin V'Nefesh Tachas Ayin. We did this already. The Bahati the Averlei, which literally there could be times when you find a case where both an eye and a life are taken from an eye, and Nafkalei and Ishmasei, when the one who caused the damage is so weak, the based in blinds. Yeah, okay. Well, my kusha, the Gemara says, what's the difficulty? Dilma meimed abdinan late. Perhaps, okay, we did this already. So yeah, Rabbi Zvid, that's what we're holding. Okay, so the Gemara says like this. Rabbi Zvid Mishmei Rabba Omar. Rabbi Zvid says in the name of Rabba. Omar Kro, the pasuk says petza tachas petza, or petza tachas petza, a wound for a wound. Litin tsar b'makom nezek. They teach us that one who injures another person must pay compensation from pain, even in a case where he pays compensation for damage. And if it enters in your mind that eye for eye means literally, so if an eye means actually removing an eye, then just as it is so that the injured party has pain from the loss of his eye, the one who caused him injury, also has pain when the Beis Din removes his eye. So why then does the Torah require that he pay compensation for pain as well? So the Gemara says, "My kusha dilma ika inish demefanik." Perhaps there's people who are like delicate. Isli tzara tvei, so he has more pain. Ika inish demefanik, and there are people who are not so mufunak, not so delicate. Less they tzara, and they do not have the same amount of pain. Therefore, even if the Beis Din actually removes an eye for an eye, the one who caused the injury might still need to compensate the injured party for pain. So the Gemara says, "L'may nafkamina." What's the practical difference? The meisve lehach the beinei. A person who caused injury is chayav to give an injured party compensation for the difference between them and pain tolerance. Therefore, the Gemara does not accept what Rabbi Zvid says. Now, the Gemara says, "Rabbi Mishmei Omar Kra." The pasuk says, "V'rapoi yirapei." Torah says, "And he shall cause him to be healed." Litin efur b'makom nezek. Teaches that a person who injures another person must pay compensation for medical costs, even in a case where he pays. Litin efur b'makom nezek. He has to pay for the medical cost, even in a case where he pays compensation for damage. And if you think that ayin tachas ayin means literally ki hechet ahai ki asya, so just as it is so that the injured party needs healing, the one who caused him the injury also needs healing after the Beis Din removes his eye. So why then does the Torah require to pay the compensation for medical costs? The Gemara says again, "My kusha dilma ika desalach bisrahaya." Perhaps there is one whose flesh heals quickly, ika delay salach bisrahaya, and there is another whose flesh does not heal quickly. Therefore, even if the Beis Din actually removes an eye for an eye, the one who caused the injury might still need to compensate the injured party for the medical costs. The mate of lay haich the beinei, in a case where the one who caused the injury is chayav to give the injured party compensation for the difference between the respective medical costs. Rashi says, "Asya tachas mishet." Says we learn a gzershava tachas misher. Ksivach ayin tachas ayin. Ksivasam shalom misher tachas asher. So mala halon, just like over there, it means mamin. So to af kan means mamin. My chazis, yalef tachas misher. Why do you learn tachas misher? Nelef tachas ma'adam. The ksiv nasata nefesh tachas nefesh. And mala halon means that you actually get executed. One gets executed. Af kan is mamish. So Amri done the nezikim done nezikim mimisa. So Mar says adarab done adam bebehema. Rashi metachas hashina yalaflei. Pasuk says, and he has afflicted her adam nezikim, a man from a man, and damages from the damages. Tanya, we learned in a Bryce, Rabbi Lezer says, ayin tachas ayin mamish. An eye for an eye literally means an actual eye. Mamish Solgadaitach. So the Gemara says, you think it means an actual eye? Rabbi Lezer, Leslie, Kechil, Hani, Tanoi. Does Rabbi Lezer not learn, like all the rest of the Tanoim, explain that this pasuk is referring to monetary payment? Rabbi says, Leimer she'ein shaman eisik eved. Lezer means to say that the Beis Din does not appraise the injured party as a slave to assess the compensation of the injury. So who do we assess? Like a ben chedin? Ben chedin mi isli dami? Does Rabbi Lezer mean to say that the Beis Din does not appraise the injured party as if he were going to be sold as a slave, but rather, ben chedin mi isli dami? Elam Rabashi leimer she'en shaman eisib benizik ela ben mazik. Rather, the vart is that they appraise the one who caused the damage. In other words, the Beis Din appraises how much the latter's value would be reduced were he to sustain the same injury he caused to the injured party, and he pays that amount. So the Gemara says like this: Hahu chamra dekate yida diyanuka. There was a certain donkey that severed the hand of a child. Also, the kamei of Papa Bar Shmuel. So the case came, and the dinteta came in front of Papa Bar Shmuel. Amar lehu zilu shumu le'arboim dvarim. So he told the officer of the court, go appraise the 4 types of damages for the child. But we learned in the Mishnah there are 5. Our Mishnah. What he meant to say is, I was saying to include everything besides 4 damage. But this is a case of a donkey, and a donkey only pays for nezek. So he told him, Zilu shumu le niske. Go appraise for the child the value of the damage. But doesn't a child need to be appraised as a slave? Zilu shaimu ka'avda. Go appraise him as a slave. So the father of the child said to them, I do not want my child to be appraised as a slave. The zila be milsa, because it's like a zilzul for him. So they said to the father, but you're acting as a detriment for the child, because he's not going to receive the compensation for the injury. So when he matures, I will appease him with my own money rather than see him. So the Gemara says like this: another ma'isa hu teira the alis yidei yinuka. There's a certain ox that chewed the hand of a child, injured him. They told go appraise him as a slave. But Rabbi, you said, with regard to anyone who's appraised as a slave, in order to determine the amount of a monetary penalty, the penalty is not collected by courts of Bava. It's not necessary to appraise his value in order to force the guilty party to pay restitution, but it's nevertheless necessary to determine his value. Why? Because if the injured party seizes property from the one who caused him injury, and the property is equal in value to what the payment should be, the Beis Din will not compel him to return it. Rava goes according to his reasoning. Compensation for damage to an ox, and an ox, and the damage niske shed b'shed niske shed ba'adam. So the halachas gave in esim b'bava. We do collect it in bava. Niske adam ba'adam, but compensation for damage by adam ba'adam and niske adam b'shed. Then the halacha is a person caused by a person for damage to a person caused by an ox is not collected. Ain't given esim b'bava. Niske shed b'sher, niske adam sher b'adam given esim b'bava. Niske adam be'adam and niske adam b'sher ain't given esim b'bava. Ma'asha niske adam b'adam and niske sher b'sher. Now, what's the difference about the compensation for damage a person caused by a person and for damage to a person caused by an ox that's not collected in Bavel? If you say that we require dayanim to collect damages, veleka, and you don't have over here, there's no dayanim musmachim in Bavel, so then in the case of a damage caused by an ox to an ox, and damage caused by a person to an ox, we need to have dayanim, and there's no dayanim musmachim in Bavel. So what's the difference about damage to an ox caused by an ox and damage to an ox caused by a man? So that the Dayanim and Bavel can rule in these cases even though they are not musmachim. So it says like this: the shlichusayu ka'avdinon. Difference is that the Dayanim in Bavel performed the shlichus, the agency of the Dayanim of Eretz Yisrael, just as we do with regards to admissions of loans. We are permitted to rule in those cases as shluchim of the Dayanim in Eretz Yisrael. Adam b'sher nami. If so, then in the case of damage caused to a person by a person. No. We are the shluchim. That's the famous thing. Meaning, even the dayanim who are not musmachim, how can you make a dinter? Let's say collect. Who's looking over them? So let's see. Shlichus kavdinan. Immediately have ideas about voice. Adam b'sher nami. So the Gemara says, in the case of a person by a person, and cases of damage caused to a person by an ox as well, why don't you say that the Dayanim of Bavel performed the shlichus of the judges of Eretz Yisrael, just as with regards to Ahidois V'Alvois? So Amri, they said like this: when we, the Dayanim in Bavel, perform the agency of the Dayanim in Eretz Yisrael, b'midi dikim le begavei. We do so in matters where the ruling is clear to us. But in matters where the ruling is not clear to us, now then we do not perform shlichus of the Dayanim in Eretz Yisrael. So in the case, let's say, of the injury to a person, which requires a shumah, which requires an appraisal, that le'avdin shlichusayo. Amri, the Chacham state like this: in the case damage caused an ox by an ox, and damage caused to an ox by a man, cases that we do judge in Bavel, this ruling is also not clear to us because you still right. You need to demand. You need to appraise the damage. Rather, how do the dayanim assess in these cases? We go out and see how much the ox is sold for in the marketplace, and thereby assess the value of the damage, which is detailed appraisal. Adam b'Adam. So now, in the case of damage caused to a person by a person, and b'Sher Nami in the case of Adam b'Sher Nami in the case of a person of an ox, to Peichazi Heicha or Kama Mizamni Avdi B'Shuka. Go ahead and see how a slave is sold in the slave market. So why then is the case later? The latter case is not judged in Bavel. Then furthermore, Tashlim Kefil Tashlim Bava Chamisha. In the case of double payment of, let's say, double, or in the case of 4 or 5 times, where the kitzi, where the payments are fixed and there's no need for an appraisal, we should perform the agency of Shluchim Eretz Yisrael.
We open a short case.
You're right. It's exactly. So Amri, they say like this: Ki kavdina shluchusaya, when we perform the agency of the judges of Eretz Yisrael, b'memeina. We do so in the cases where the guilty party pays monetary restitution for loss he caused. The knasa, but in the case of knas, a penalty such as, let's say, kefil or dal v'hei, lo yavdin shluchasaya, we do not perform the shlichus of the dayanim in Eretz Yisrael. So the Gemara asks, Adam ba'adam, in the cases of damage caused to a person by a person, the memainahu, where the chiyuv party pays monetary restitution, navish shluchasayu. Should we perform the shlichus of the judges in Eretz Yisrael? So the Gemara answers, when we perform the shlichus of the dayanim in Eretz Yisrael, we do so only in cases that are common. In the case of damage caused to a person by a person, which is not common, which is uncommon, then we do not perform the shlichus, the judge to be shluchim of judges in Eretz Yisrael. So the Gemara says, but in the case, let's say, of humiliation and degradation, after being, let's say, a woman is raped or seduced, this shchiach, it's a case that's common. We should perform to be a shliach of the Yanam in Eretz Yisrael. So Amri, they say, Hachanami, indeed, we do collect for Beishas Pagam. The Harapapa Agbi Arba Me'ezuzah de la Beishas. The Papa collected 400 dinars as compensation for Beishas when he judged these cases. But less than the Papa. But the other Chacham do not agree with the ruling of Rav Papa. B'shliach the shlach later Chisda Nachman, the shlach Chisda Knasa Komagbis Bebabel. So we see Rav Chisda sent a question to Rav Nachman asking if we should collect the Beishas of Pagam, and Rav Nachman said to him that Chisda, do you collect Knas and Bavel? So the Gemara says, Ella ki abdin shluchusayu, when we perform the agency of the judges of Eretz Yisrael, b'milsa d'shchicha. It's matters that's common. And it involves a monetary loss. But in a matter that's common but does not involve a monetary loss, or something which is common but has a chesaron kis, then in a case where an injury caused to a person by a person, even though it has a chesaron kis, it has monetary loss, since it's not common. So we do not perform the agency of the Yanim in Eretz Yisrael. Baishis, in the case of humiliation, even though it's common, given the less since it does not involve monetary loss, we do not perform the agency of the Yanim in Eretz Yisrael. Gemara challenges the halacha of a shed b'sher given b'bubble, but is in the case of the Beis Din in bubble collects shed b'sher, we collect in bubble. The Amar Rava share shizik and gave an issue of bubble. But Rava says if an ox caused damages, the Beis Din does not collect the compensation. So the Gemara says the azik man, to whom did the ox damage? Ilema the azik adam. If you see that it damaged a person, might you share the azik adam? Why did Rava specifically state his halach in a case where an ox that damaged a person? I feel adam the azik adam nami and gave an issue of bubble. Even in a case of a person who damaged a person, which is more common, the Beis Din does not collect the compensation. But rather the azik share. Rather, it's obvious that Rava meant that an ox damaged an ox and gave an issue of bubble, and it says clearly that you don't collect it in bubble. So Amri the Chacham responds, Hasam betam. There, Rava ruled his ruling with regards to a tam, and whose owner pays for the damage as a penalty, and the penalties are not collected in bubble. And Hacha b'muad. Here, Rava states his ruling with regards to a muad, and payment for damages caused not as a penalty, but rather serves as compensation. Where it says Rava in muad b'bubble, but Rava says there's no muad in bubble. So the Gemara answers and says, Amri di yaid hasam aisu lahacha. Case where an ox was forewarned there in Eretz Yisrael, and the owner brought it here. So Gemara says v'milza l'shichi, but this is an uncommon matter. And we just said that an uncommon manner do not say that we do not perform the agency of the judges in Eretz Yisrael. So my answers and says the Asur Rabbanan the Hasam v'yadu hacha. It's the case where the Chachamim from there in Eretz Yisrael who were ordained came and declared this ox was a muad in Bavel. Where it says milsa l'shchichi. At the end of the day, it's an uncommon manner. You just said as something which is uncommon matter, we do not perform the agency of the Yanim in Eretz Yisrael. When did Rava say that Beis Din collects the restitution for damage caused by an ox? He means b'shein v'regel, with regards to the damage of eating and trampling. To mu'adim, like we said many times in the beginning of the Masechta, the mu'adim and tchilas aninu, which are mu'ad from the outset. So all agree that since they are common forms of damage and involve chesaron kis, the Dayanim of Bavel perform the agency of the shlichus of Dayanim in Eretz Yisrael and collect compensation for this damage. Okay, so now the Gemara returns to the discussion of the Mishnah like this. Tsar, how is the payment of pain assessed? Kavoye b'shapade b'masmer. If one burned another one with a skewer or with a hot nail, or even if he burned him on his fingernails, where he would not cause a bruise that would affect the victim's value of the slave, the Beis Din evaluates how much money a person with a similar threshold for pain as the victim is willing to take in order to suffer this way. So the Gemara says, Sar says that even when the pain is not in a place that causes damage to the injured party, the one who causes the injury must pay compensation. Man Tana, who is the Tana who taught the statement? The Tanya Rebbe Eimer, Kviya Nemer Tchila. So he says
kviya tachas kviya, and then that's a lashon again.
Yeah, so he says like this. It says kviya tachas kviya, chabura tachas chabura. So Rabbi says a burn is the first term stated in the pasuk, and Azai says chabura nemer tchila, a bruise is the first term in the pasuk. What are they arguing? Rabbi Savar, Rabbi Danas Yotz Kivia Deles Bechabura Mashma. He says that Kivia indicates an injury with no bruise, and that one is chayav to pay for injuring another person in that manner. So therefore, Kasav Rachmana Chabura Lagluya Kasav Rachmana Chabura Lagluya Allah Dechvia. Therefore, Chabura Lagluya Allah. So therefore, the Torah writes Chabura to reveal about the meaning of Kviya. The East Bechabur in to tell us that if the burn also has a bruise, then yes, the one who causes the injury must pay for compensation for the pain. And Eloi, but if the burn has no bruise, then the one who caused that injury does not pay compensation for the pain alone. Benazi Savar, Benazi says Kivia, the East Bechabura Mashma. Kivia indicates a burn that also has a bruise, and that one would be chayav to pay for injuring another party in that manner. Therefore, the Torah writes Chabura to reveal about the meaning of Kivia the less pay Chabura.
And you pay for that. And you pay for that.
Yeah, even though there's just pain, even though there's no damage, you have to pay.
So you shot how much a person would be willing
to take that pain. Yeah. So Maskal the Papa Adarab on the contrary, the opposite is true. Rabbi Eimer Kviya Nemer Tchila. Rabbi says Tchila first Savar Kviya the Ispe Chabura Mashma. It has to be a Chabura. Because Shachman Chabura, the Gluya the Chivia, the Leste Chabura. So therefore the Torah writes to reveal the meaning of Kviya that even if it's a burn with no bruise, the one who caused the injury must pay compensation to pain alone, even though there's no bruise. And Ben Azai Eimer Chabura Nemer Tchila Savar, Ben Azai says that the bruise in the first term stated in the pasuk holds Kviya the Leste Chabura Mashma. He holds that Kviya indicates an injury with no bruise, and that one would be chayiv to pay for injuring another even in that manner. Therefore, the Torah writes, Chabura is to reveal about the meaning of Kivia. These be Chabura in. If there's a Chabura, yes. Eloi, Eloi. A maskana kaima. And with regards to the meaning of the term, the pasukim are based on the final understanding of the pasuk. The first term stated, it's referring to the understanding of the first term after the second term has been written, not with the understanding of the first term would have been if not for the addition of the second term. So according to this explanation of Rapapa, the Mishnah here is in accordance to the opinion of Rabbi. Inami, or alternatively, the Kula Ama Kviya. Everyone agrees that Kviya ben the Ispe Chabura ben the Chabura Mashma indicates an injury whether there's a bruise or whether there's no bruise. V'hacha, and here, Bechlal ubefrat hamurchokim zeh k'mifagi. Rabbi Yehuda Anasi, Rabbi and Benazi disagree of whether the principle with regards to a klal and a detail are distant from each other. So when you have a klal which is followed by a prat, Allah applies only in the case specified in the detail. So the pasuk kviya, tachas kviya, or let's say petza tachas petza, or chabura tachas chabura, the word kviya stated in the beginning of the pasuk is a klal that includes burns, not accompanied by bruises, as well as burns accompanied by bruises. Chabura stated in the end of the pasuk is a detail of a burn that is accompanied by a bruise. So the Torah distanced the detail chabura from the klal kviya by stating halacha, a wound for wound between them. So Rabbi holds ain't done isik klal prat. We don't say this klal prat. Ben Azai says done isik klal prat. We do darshan the klal prat. So why does he say chabura? Mar says the damim yisedim. The pasuk teaches the chabura is necessary to teach the halacha of additional money in a case where someone causes a burn with a bruise. He pays an additional compensation for the bruise beyond that for the burn. All right, we'll stop and Mr.